It is my honor to present the Larry Foster Award for Integrity in Public Communication to Eugene Robinson. To capture the breadth and depth of Gene's contributions to journalism, and yes, democracy, is a monumental assignment. While truth has somehow become debatable in this era of rampant disinformation, the unyielding core of Gene's work in his columns in the Washington Post and as a political analyst for MSNBC has been speaking clear-eyed truth with integrity, clarity, courage, and historical perspective. Gene grew up in segregated Orangeburg, South Carolina, and was just 13 when highway patrolmen shot and killed 3 Black students protesting segregation at a local bowling alley in what would be called the Orangeburg Massacre. Most impactful was his grounding as the son of a mother who served as a head librarian throughout his childhood and a father who served in World War II in a segregated unit. So service, despite it all, or maybe because of it all, was his calling, and he found it in journalism, becoming the first Black editor-in-chief of the Michigan Daily College newspaper at the University of Michigan, and years later being inducted into the National Association of Black Journalists Hall of Fame. At the Washington Post, he rose from City Hall reporter to South America correspondent, London bureau chief, foreign editor, assistant managing editor of the style section, and to the politics and culture columnist. In 2009, he was awarded a Pulitzer Prize for commentary for his column on Barack Obama's first presidential campaign. One of those columns on Black patriotism especially resonates today against the backdrop of the January 6th insurrection on the US Capitol by self-proclaimed patriots, both organized white supremacists and a largely white mob of regular folk like teachers and CEOs, real estate agents, nurses, president, former military, police officers, elected politicians, and so many others. In that 2008 column, Gene wrote, "It's a historical fact that Black soldiers and sailors who fought overseas in World War II came home to southern cities where they had to ride in the back of the bus. And they were angry that the nation for which they had sacrificed would treat them that way. To some whites, I guess, it may seem logical to be suspicious of Black patriotism, to believe that anger must somehow temper love of country. It doesn't, of course. It never has. Black Americans are just more intimately and acutely aware of some of our nation's flaws than many white Americans might be. Just the fact that Obama might win is an incredible change for this country, and recognizing the importance of that change is, to me, the very essence of patriotism. What's unpatriotic is pretending that the past never happened. What's unpatriotic is failing to acknowledge that we've struggled with race for nearly 400 years. What's unpatriotic is relegating Black history to the month of February, when really it's American history, without which this nation could never be what it is today. I can't think of a better example of truth in communication, of speaking up when others will not, and of calling on our better selves. You've inspired so many, Gene, and let's hear from a few others. Play the video, please.
It's been fantastic to work with Gene. We've been colleagues most of our adult lives at the Washington Post. And it's been one of the great honors and joys and privileges for me being at the Post, having Gene as a colleague.
You know, I've known Gene for a long time, first as a fan, following his work and his writing, but more recently I've been really blessed to have him as a regular guest on the show. And we try to have him on as much as possible because we consider him to be part of the family on Morning Joe.
Integrity for Gene, I would say it's at the foundation of everything he does. You know, when he was a reporter and an editor, integrity meant always writing with fairness and balance, always making sure every side in a dispute got its say in his story, taking that extra minute or hour or whatever it is to make sure you get things right. And then as a columnist, integrity is still at the center of what he does.
Well, integrity is a word that fits Gene perfectly, whether you look at his writing or his public pronouncements, the way he's lived his life, and also the way he's carried himself. We've had him on the show, and when we've talked about some of the most difficult topics after Trayvon, all the way through George Floyd, Gene would open up and be very honest about the conversations that he had to have as a dad to his sons when they started driving, talked about the challenges that they had to face. And he did it. He was straightforward. He did it honestly. He did it with integrity. And he helped so many people in our audience understand better the challenges that this country still faces.
Gene, you've been a personal and professional inspiration to me, and I couldn't be happier and more honored to present this award to you. Congratulations, Gene.
Thank you, Sandra, for your overly kind words. And thank you to the Page Center for this impactful and important award. It is a great honor to share this award tonight with my fellow honorees, Bill Heyman, Judy Woodruff, and Dr. Fauci, all of whom I so greatly admire. And it is a special privilege to receive this award at a time when the issue of integrity of communications is not just at the center of our national debate, it seems to me at the center of our national destiny. It is such an important question right now for all of us. And I'll just tell one very quick story from the beginning of my career. After the University of Michigan, my first job was at the San Francisco Chronicle. And so I was the cub reporter, and the cub reporter starts at the bottom. And so my first assignment was to do an obituary. We did an obituary at the Chronicle for any longtime local resident who had died. It didn't have to be a famous person, it just someone who was a longtime San Franciscan who had passed away. And so on my first day on the job, my editor walks back and hands me the assignment, the name of the person who had died, the name of the funeral home, and says, do an obituary. And then he perches himself on my desk and says, now, a few things you need to think about. This man who died was a bus driver. When you, your first thing you will do is you will ask the library for clips to see what we've written about him in the past, and you won't find any. He hasn't been written about in the newspaper before. He's just a regular guy. His this will be the first and only time his name appears in his hometown newspaper. And so when the paper is published tomorrow with his obituary as written by you, the family's going to buy 10 copies of the paper. And they're going to clip out that little obituary. It's only going to be 5 inches long, but they're going to clip it out. And one copy is going to go into the family Bible. Another copy is going to go on the mirror on his widow's dresser. The children are going to take copies of this obituary. It's going to be treasured in the family as long as there is a family. And so I want you to imagine how you will feel knowing that if you get something wrong in this obituary. So you will not get anything wrong. You will check the facts. You will check them again. You will check them a third time if necessary, but you will not get anything wrong because that is the worst thing you can do. The worst thing you can do is tell the reader something that is not true. And so that is the ethos that journalists grew up with when I was growing up, and that our institutions, the Washington Post, PBS Newshour, other major institutions still live by. Yet we're at a point in this nation where we don't agree on the truth. We don't agree on what is fact. We don't agree on what happened yesterday, let alone what it means. And so I see this as someone who has worked as a journalist all my career as a real crisis for the nation, because without a common encyclopedia of facts and a common chronicle of events, I don't know how we move forward. I don't know how we even have the discussions that we need to have to move forward. And so that's our challenge. It's a challenge for the Page Center. And I'm rooting on those scholars at the Page Center and everywhere else because it's going to take a monumental effort from all of us just to try to get us back on the same page. That's where we need to be. But thank you once again, Sandra. This is an amazing and an amazing award.
Well, you're welcome, Gene. And as the child of a career military father, I especially your column. I really want to thank you for writing that column because you've said so much that I've been thinking out through so much of my life. But piggybacking on what you were just talking about distrust, you've said that you really want to tackle the issue of rampant disinformation, distrust of media. What needs to happen for facts to prevail?
Well, I used to believe and still want to believe that the truth wins in the end, and I know that we have to keep putting the truth out there, and we have to call out lies and distortions and gaslighting. We have to call that stuff out when we see it. Yet that very plainly, in and of itself, isn't working. I mean, let's be honest. It's not overcoming the forces of disinformation that are working against truth. And I personally believe we still need to do more research. We need to understand better how disinformation works, how it works on the individual, how it works on groups, how it's spread, especially through social media, but also through other media of communication. It perpetuates itself, and where in that process it would be possible or worthwhile to try to intervene. And efforts so far have been sort of uninformed and scattershot and not effective. And I wish it were otherwise. I wish we were doing better. I wish truth were doing better against falsehood. But I can't say that it is right now.
Well, we'll put our hope in the Arthur W. Page Center and their research.
I'm rooting them on. I really am.
There we go. I have to ask, after the killing of George Floyd and the ensuing protests and many, many people discovered racism for the first time in that time, there were many calls for reform. What does racial reckoning mean to you, and has progress been made?
Well, first of all, yes, progress has been made, and in this sense, I mean, my view has always been that the way we make progress on race in this country and the way we have done for 400 years is not smooth. It's certainly not continuous. It's often not comfortable. It's a scratchy process. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. It can be very uncomfortable and full of conflict. And that's the way it is. We don't all sit around in a circle and sing Kumbaya. We fight and dispute, and then 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, we look back and we say, wow, we actually made some progress over that period, even though that didn't necessarily feel like it at that time. So this past year was unlike any other. I mean, and there was a big difference between the crowds that we saw spontaneously going into the streets after the killing of George Floyd to protest police violence against African Americans, between those crowds and the crowds we saw, say, in 1968 or at other points in our history, even the crowds we saw after the killings of Trayvon Martin and others. This time, there was much greater diversity. This time it happened across the country. This time it was white people and Asian people and Latino people and everybody seeming to kind of get it or get more of it than before. And it's again, this is not a straight line from point A to nirvana, but that is progress. One thing that we're working on and that's being worked on now is learning our history. February is Black History Month. I've long said every month should be Black History Month. There is no American history without Black history. There simply is not. This would not be the same country without African Americans and the contributions they made and the suffering they endured. In the field of history, I know there has been a reckoning. There's been a lot of scholarship on the history of African Americans as part of the tapestry of American history. A lot of new research, and as that filters out into the consciousness of the nation and into the curricula of the schools, I think that's a good thing.
Well, we did get a number of questions for you too, and this is one from Wei Wu Zhang. He's professor at Texas Tech University. How do media help to minimize the rampant political polarization in the U.S.?
We're not doing a very good job of it right now. What we have is a media ecosystem, much different from the one I grew up in. I grew up when there were 3 television networks and there was a local newspaper and they all had the ethos of trying to play it down the middle and trying to give it'd be as fair as possible to both sides. That's just not the case anymore. And so, what can we do? What can we do at the Washington Post? What can we do at PBS Newshour? We can just tell the truth. We can be as honest and as possible, knowing that in and of itself doesn't solve the problem, but that's what's within our power to do, and that's all we can do.
Well, we'll close with a question from Lillian McAllis, who's a student at Penn State University. And she asks, what tips do you have for recent communications graduates on remaining honest and ethical?
Number one, remain honest and ethical. Don't, you know what's right, you know what's wrong, and you know what you should and shouldn't do. And if you're working, you find yourself at an organization that asks you to do something that's dishonest, or that shades the truth in a way to advance somebody's agenda or whatever, and that's wrong, then that's the wrong place for you to be. And there is out there in the world the right place for you to be. This is a time of enormous change and opportunity in the field of communications, and I think there's the right situation for everybody. But I think you definitely go into the field knowing that you do not have to compromise your principles and you do not have to compromise your ethics. There is the right job out there for you. And if the one you have now is not that job, then there are lots of people who will help you find the right one.
On that note, Gene, thank you for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for your commitment to integrity, and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Sandra.
I'm honored tonight to introduce our final recipient, Judy Woodruff, whose remarkable career in journalism has taken her from a local CBS affiliate in Georgia to NBC News to CNN to Harvard to PBS and to some of the most important news, events, and interviews in history. Today, she is the anchor and managing editor of the PBS Newshour. Judy is known for her composed delivery, debate moderation skills, and fact-based reporting. She is a champion for women in the media and is an advocate for social causes such as gender equity, racial diversity, and healthcare and disease awareness. On 2013 on NewsHour, alongside Gwen Eiffel, another Page Center Award recipient, Judy made history as the first all-female anchor team on an American network news broadcast. Judy is the recipient of numerous awards, such as the Edward R. Murrow Lifetime Achievement Award in television, the Medal for Lifetime Achievement in Journalism from the Poynter Institute, and the Gwen Eiffel Press Freedom Award. Judy, you've been a mentor to many female journalists and a role model to thousands more. It's hard to describe how much you mean to young people in communications and journalism, particularly young women. When I mentioned to my Boston University students that I would be introducing Judy tonight, several female students immediately wrote back, "Wow, she is super smart," or "She is my hero." Same for a female colleague of mine who wrote, "Judy is a pioneer!" Or even my own daughter, Sarah, who worked with Judy on NewsHour, who said simply, "I want to be Judy Woodruff." Judy, congratulations on a remarkable career in which you have helped inform, educate, and inspire. And congratulations on winning the Larry Foster Award for Integrity in Public Communication. I'd now like to introduce a video featuring some of your admirers, in addition to Dr. Fauci.
Judy's whole life is rooted in integrity. It's defined by her integrity, her commitment to justice and honor, and to helping people, her generosity. She's the most loving, thoughtful person I've ever known. She is an incredible journalist. Her leadership also around the world in helping to start the International Women's Media Foundation, helping and mentoring women in conflict zones and living under dictatorships, women struggling to report honestly and stay out of prison. That is something that really defines one of her great contributions to journalism. That's global.
She is modest, but very confident, highly skilled, thoroughly professional, generous, compassionate, empathetic, collegial, amiable. She's loved by her colleagues, and she's a devoted wife and mother.
She has just done so much for so many people in her incredible career as a journalist, not just, of course, informing us all so much of all of the world events, of all of the different presidents that she's covered, all the different seminal moments in American history that she has been there to anchor us through. But she's also someone who has really taken the time to mentor other people, taken the time to really be nice and gracious and generous to other people. So I'm so excited that I'm able to talk on her behalf and to really talk a little bit about the Judy that I know.
I look up to her as a role model, not just as her niece, but for women all over the globe, just watching her aspire and work her way up, a very male-focused industry for a lot of her career, and stand by some of the top politicians and presidents and key news events throughout her career has been amazing. Just the stories I hear, she's a true trailblazer in journalism.
Ladies and gentlemen, Judy Woodruff.
Thank you, Gary Sheffer. I'm holding this up, which is what we were told to do. So I'm following in the footsteps of my good friend, Eugene Robinson. And by the way, may I just associate myself with all of Gene's remarks, because he put so perfectly what we are all dealing with right now in journalism. But the first thing I want to do is say thank you. This is such a wonderful, such a remarkable award for all of us to be in the company of these three remarkable individuals, Dr. Fauci, Bill Heyman, and of course, Gene, their extraordinary careers. For me, this is the first time to receive an award with the term integrity in it. So it's just especially meaningful. And I'll just say one thing before I do want to take your questions and know what others have asked. But just to say that I am so filled with gratitude right now to think that I've been able to do the work that I love for all these years, to still be able to contribute, to be able to ask questions of people who are in the middle of some of the toughest dilemmas of our time, to be able to be a witness, to bear witness, and to try to understand and to pass that understanding along to the American people is just an incredible gift and incredible responsibility. And for me, I wake up every morning and I can't believe I'm still able to do the work that I love. And the only other thing I'll say, and Gene certainly talked about this, is that we are in such a tumultuous moment in journalism time. We are dealing with a completely upside down business model. What used to be the way it worked is no longer the way it worked. We are dealing with a political polarization that has challenged our ability to cover this country. And we are challenged to look at ourselves and to do a better job of being, of looking like the rest of America. We've talked about diversity and inclusion for as long as I've been in journalism, but we still have a very long way to go. So I'm glad to talk about any of those things. And I just want to say thank you to the folks you just saw, the history of the NewsHour, and Robin McNeil, who along with Jim Lehrer was a founder of the NewsHour when it was just the McNeil-Lehrer Report back in 1975. And then the future of the NewsHour you saw there in Yamiche Alcindor, who is just a stunningly remarkable journalist herself. And of course, I want to thank my friend Andrea Mitchell and my beloved niece, Hillary Hunt. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Gary. Thank you, but I'm filled with gratitude.
Terrific, Judy, and thank you for those terrific remarks. I'd like to build on, Judy, the conversation that Sandra and Gene were talking about. And I'm a former journalist myself, and I read this quote from you that I wanted to ask you about. You said a free press is at the heart of American democracy. It's what ties the American people to their government, to each other, and to the rest of the world. In that regard, how can journalists today combat, as Gene and Sandra talked about, this wave of fake information, disinformation, that is this wave that is washing over us?
It's a great question, Gary, and it's one of the toughest things we face right now, because there have always been efforts I've covered politics for virtually my entire career, and politicians have always wanted to spin. I mean, they all want to come across in the best possible light. It's human nature to want to do that. But we now live in an era where facts are just tossed out the window, and people are embracing theories and ideas and claims that have no relevance whatsoever to the truth, to the facts. And so we have to work every day, not so much to be scolds or to be negative about it, but to try to lift up facts and to emphasize facts, to shine a light on what's real and what's true by talking to people who are real, like Dr. Fauci, who know whereof they speak, and calling out, holding public figures accountable when necessary. But again, to do it, Gary, in a way where we're not scolding, we're not constantly saying we know better than you do, we are the smart guys and the rest of you don't know anything. We can't talk down to the American people. Mm-hmm. We can't talk down to people just because they may have some ideas that aren't based in fact and in reality. It may be they picked it up because somebody said it who they admired and they looked up to. And so this is not something that's going to change overnight. It has to happen day after day, hour after hour, month, week, month, year. And I'm counting on the younger generation of journalists who are certainly out there, and I meet them all the time. At least I did when I could get out of my house to get around. But I know they're there because I hear from them through social media, and I see them. I see them on the air, and I see them all the time. I know they're there, and I know they're being educated right now in the Belisario College.
Well, speaking, I'm going to jump ahead to a question then, Judy. You're talking about young journalists. We do have a question from one tonight. And this is from Amy Stokes, at the University of Massachusetts. And she said, Judy, you've been quoted as saying, there is no such thing as objectivity, but that you do your best to be fair. What is the difference between being fair versus balanced reporting?
Well, it is true. I will back up what she said. I've said, because I've long believed there is no such thing as objectivity. All of us reporters, journalists, are human beings. We're the sum total of all of our experiences, wherever we've been. I'm a woman, I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, I'm a wife, I'm someone who's lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time, child of a father who was a career military, career Army, someone who grew up living all over the world on military bases, someone who thought she was going to go into math before I ended up in political science and then journalism. That's who I am. The mother of a child with disabilities, the mother of a daughter adopted from Korea. All of these things, the people I've known, the stories I've covered, have all shaped who I am and what I know, what I believe I know. And yet I'm learning every day. So I'm never a finished product, if you will. But to your point, we be fair in that give all points of view their time as they deserve it, but not an artificial balance. I mean, we're in an age, for example, when we know that climate change is real. We no longer have to give 50% of the airtime to people who are denying that climate change is real. We need to cover it. Yes, we can explain from time to time. There's still people who are skeptical, but we have to use our heads and be real, be human as we make these decisions.
Terrific. Well, I'm going to ask you about the recent events at the Capitol, Judy, on January 6th. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and he pointed me to a special broadcast featuring you and your NewsHour colleagues recounting personal stories about covering the insurrection at the Capitol. And they recall Yamiche Alcindor saying that she was at the White House and fought crying by thinking, if Judy can pull this off without crying, I can too. Emotions are so important in covering events like this. I think it'd be really helpful to, particularly some of the students who are watching tonight, to tell us, what were you feeling on that day that in many ways changed our country?
The worst attack on our democracy in certainly in our lifetimes, and in many ways since what we saw during the Civil War, what we've seen in wartime when other forces out of our control, other countries have wanted to overthrow our government. We had people within our own country trying to overthrow our government, overthrow our electoral system. That day started out normally. Gary, we thought we were going to be covering the counting of electoral votes, the recording of what we do every 4 years. It's so routine. We usually don't even cover it. But because of the uncertainty this year, of course, around the challenges, we were paying very close attention. Of course, we were covering the protest. But as the crowd built, as the Capitol was breached, I have to give enormous credit to my colleague, Lisa Desjardins. She was inside the Capitol just a few feet away as they broke through the first set of doors, broke the glass, came in. She walked along with them, climbed the stairs with them, tried to speak with them, to understand, to ask them why they were there, what they wanted, what was the goal of being there. And it was one of those things where it was unfolding before your eyes. You literally could not believe that it was happening. You were praying that there wouldn't be loss of life. And of course, we didn't learn until later that there had been loss of life, about a police officer, others, the woman who was shot. But it's our responsibility as reporters, as journalists, to record these things, to speak about them as factually as we can, to get all the information. But you are absolutely right. At some point, we're humans too, and we break down. I was there, reporting on 9/11 as I watched the second tower come down. And all you can think is, God rest their souls. Right. And on a day like that, I was thinking, God rest the soul of this country. But the question is a very good one, because it goes to the heart of what we do. We've covered so many events over the last several years that have made us question the stability, the strength of our system of government. And we've been called names, from fake news to enemies of the American people. And we've had to stand strong. And I don't mean me, but my colleagues. And I've taken strength from watching my colleagues just keep going, keep asking the tough questions, keep reporting, understanding that in the end, we are the eyes and ears for the American people. And we have to hold it together, because we're holding it together for them. We're holding it together for our democracy. And it's a reminder of why this free press is so important.
Well, Judy, thank you very much. I just love your words about a free press sort of binding together our society and our democratic processes. So thank you for all you've done, and particularly for the inspiration that you've been to so many female journalists, female communicators. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a deep honor. Thank you so much.